The other day, a case was left on my desk. A deck with new support, a strategy that has gotten love from the ban list, a deck that has otherwise captured the public interest. Whatever the situation is, questions yearn to be answered. How is the deck played? What does the list look like? Is it playable? Ask no more. The Super Sleuth is here to crack the case. I'm Gumshu, and I'll be your deck detective. As an introduction, Deck Detective is a series in which every week I take a deck to build, discuss, and play a list of, talking about its strengths and weaknesses, as well as giving an idea of how to play it. Today, we'll be looking at Labrynth.
What is this?
The Paradox Brothers!
Salutations, you fools.
Hope you're ready to duel.
One of the brand new decks introduced in Mysterious Labrynth. Labrynth continues in the tradition of decks with fiend monsters in them that synergize with trap cards. The Labrynths all have effects that generate advantage when you use normal trap cards, specifically ones that result in a monster leaving the field. This results in a powerful advantage engine that can use generically powerful normal traps as a part of its strategy, culminating in a unique control dynamic that feels strong while not relying too heavily on floodgates. It's also fairly cheap, with many of the good traps used in the deck being rare or super rare, and the Labrynth core itself requiring only 4 to 5 ultra rares. Enough chit chat, let's talk about the cards. Before we get into the exact card by card, I'm going to talk about what the Labrynth cards themselves all do, and then later on talk about the suite of normal traps that you can play with this deck. I'm doing this for a few reasons. 1, because there aren't a million of them, like in Odd Eyes. 2, because these cards are brand new. And 3, because deck building for this deck requires some personal insight into the meta, as certain traps that do better into certain decks than others, making just copying a deck list not as viable as a more streamlined combo deck can get away with. This insight can be gained by either playtesting and grinding ladder to observe trends in popular decks, which is lame, or just by watching videos I'll have about it and asking me what to do, which is based. First we have Labrynth Clock. Quick effect, you can discard this card. This turn, you can activate one normal trap card that was set this turn if you control a Labrynth monster. A card is sent from your hand or the graveyard to activate your normal trap card or your Labrynth card or effect, except Labrynth Clock. Now this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand or special summon it. Card once per turn. Recommended ratios, 0. This card is awful, not generating any advantage, having a niche effect that will almost never come up, and it's even hard to recur without another of the appliances in rotation. Next up we have Labrynth Stovey Torby and Labrynth Chandelier. These cards are functionally the same. Quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard and discard one card, set one Labrynth spell trap from your hand or deck. If a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, or in Chandelier's case, add it to your hand. Both of them are hard once per turn. Recommended ratios 2 to 3. These cards are functionally the same, the only difference being they special summon and add to hand respectively. They have a limited pool of cards that are actually worth setting, and they require to the discard, which you can't always do with a benefit. They aren't amazing cards, but they are begrudgingly run for consistency's sake. I find that the deck is consistent enough with them at 2, but you can bump them up to 3 if you want. Next up, we have Arion the Labrynth Servant. You can send one normal trap from your hand, or that's set to your field or the graveyard, special summon one level 4 lower fiend monster from your deck to the defense position, except itself. If another monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, except during the damage step, you can draw one card, then you can apply this effect. Either special summon a fiend from your hand, or set a spell trap. All those are hard ones per turn. Recommended ratios 0 to 1. In theory, this card is a consistency booster and can enable a turn 1 rank 4, usually Baguska. However, getting rid of one of your traps is often a risky maneuver that gets punished by Ash, and you can't find this card in normal summon at turn 1 outside of hard drawing it or janky welcome Clock shenanigans. Getting an extra draw off this thing on board is nice though, so while I don't like this, there's absolutely merit to running a copy of this. Next up we have Ariana the Labrynth Servant. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Labrynth card from your deck to your hand, except herself. If another monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, you can draw a card, then apply effect, special summon a fiend from your hand, or set a spell trap from your hand. You can only use one of her effects per turn, and only once that turn. Recommended ratios 3. It's the deck's normal summon, and it searches any Labrynth card in the deck. It also has a great on-field effect to draw, furthering your advantage. Do keep in mind though, you can only use one of its effects per turn. Next up we have Labrynth Archfiend. Gains 4 in attack for each normal trap with a different name in your graveyard. Your opponent's monsters cannot target fiend bounces for attacks except itself. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If a trapped card is activated, you can special summon this card from your hand. If it's special summoned, you can set a normal trap from your deck that can only be activated when an attack is declared. Recommended ratios 0. While I think this card is really cool, it doesn't actually do anything to further the deck's game plan. Setting Mirror Force from your deck just isn't going to cut it. Next up, we have Lovely Labrynth of the Silver Castle. Your opponent cannot activate monster effects in response to the activation of your normal trap cards. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. You can target one normal trap in your graveyard, set it to your field, but it cannot be activated unless you control a fiend monster. If another monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, you can destroy one card in your opponent's hand at random or their field. Recommended ratios 1 to 2. Here she is, the big boss. She's one of those weird cards that you really don't want to draw, but summoning her from deck is so important to the game plan that you can't really afford not doing it, so many lists play her at 2, coupled with the fact that a certain other new deck that we'll get to keeps banishing our deck. Playing her at 1 is understandable though, and drawing her isn't that bad with the field spells effect. Speaking of field spell, we have Labrynth, which I will just call the field spell from here on out. If you activate a set Welcome Labrynth normal trap, you can add this additional effect, that card's effect, at resolution. Also, after that, destroy one card on the field. If you activate a non-Labrynth normal trap card, you can special summon one fiend monster from your hand or graveyard. You'll use each effect once per turn. Recommended ratios 1 to 2. Very nice combo that gives Welcome an effect to trigger what it summons. It's also very good for keeping Lovely in rotation that your pesky opponent keeps removing. Next we have Labrynth Setup. Target 2 of your Labrynth spell traps that are banished or in your graveyard, except Labrynth Setup. Shuffle them into the deck, then if you control a fiend monster, you can set non-Labrynth normal traps with different names directly from your deck equal to the number of shuffled. You can only activate 1 per turn. Recommended ratios 0 to 1. While not bad in specific scenarios to get access to more non-Labrynth traps, it's also kind of a win more card, as it requires you to have your engine already rolling to get access to it at a point in the game where it's useful. Basically, you don't really need this card, and drawing a turn 1 instead of a trap card is not good. Next up we have Welcome Labrynth, special summon one Labrynth monster from your deck. Also until the end of the next turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the deck or extra deck, except fiend monsters. If a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, while this card is in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, you can set this card. You can only use each effect once per turn. Recommended ratios 3. The best Labrynth card, summoning anything you want, including your Lovely. Not much more to say here. Next up, Fair Welcome Labrynth. When a monster declares an attack, while you control a fiend monster, target one card on the field, negate the attack, and if you do, destroy the targeted card, then you can set one non-Labrynth normal trap from your hand or deck. Recommended ratios 0. It requires an attack declaration, so it sucks. Labrynth Barrage. When you activate a set normal trap card except itself, this effect becomes that normal trap's effect when that card is activated. Also to the end of your opponent's next turn after this card resolves, your opponent takes no effect damage from your card effects. Recommended ratios 0. There's really no reason to play this over playing a trap card that already has a good effect, but the anti-burn clause is funny. Now that we have the Labrynth core established, let's get to the other trap cards that you can consider. There's a wide variety of generic trap cards to consider in this deck, ones that either remove a monster from the field or are just good enough to consider playing in spite of not doing that. Also, keep in mind that it does not have to be your opponent's monsters removed from the field. Labrynths trigger if your monsters are removed as well. I'll go ahead and start with the traps that are interesting but aren't really worth playing. Mirror Force. This is a stand-in for pretty much every battle trap that removes a monster from the field. The truth is, they just aren't good enough. The opponent will either pop them before they can activate, or just negate them. Trap holes, they're weird. Certain trap holes can be powerful blowouts in niche cases, like Time-Space Trap Hole against the Pendulum deck, but these cards tend to be too inflexible to be better than other options. The trap cards worth playing are either versatile in being able to activate them whenever we want, or get a lot more value more consistently. Discard traps is quite a number of traps that are good on paper, but require a discard, so these might be worth considering still anyway, like Dynamiscus can bypass Hugin to banish a fountain on field. The truth is that the discard really hurts this deck in the early game. The value you'd get out of keeping a card in hand for these cards is often equal or worse to what you'd get out of playing 2 cards that don't require discards. I want to discuss the virus traps real quick. One of the major strengths of this deck is that Lovely is a target for most of the virus cards. If you haven't read these before, resolving one of these can often win you the game on the spot, and if the meta calls for them, these are worth playing even though they won't trigger a lab most of the time. Also, if you have the field spell up, you can summon back the Lovely you tribute for these cards as if nothing happened. Dimensional Barrier is similar to these cards in function, a meta-dependent floodgate that can win the game immediately in certain situations. And now, for the trap cards that I would consider are definitely worth playing. Torrential Tribute. This card, while in theory able to trigger labs, will be destroying the labs that you trigger off this thing. However, it's so powerful that it's arguably worth playing anyway. Compulsory Evacuation Device. This is one of the best trap cards in the deck, non-destruction, non-once return removal, on command, doesn't cost a discard, and can even bounce back your own Ariana to trigger the other labs. It's a rare too, so it costs basically nothing. It's compulsory, you run it at 3. Next up, we have Dogmatic Punishment. While this card has its downsides, needing to use your opponent's monster, needing them to have a low enough attack to send Intis, being a hard once per turn, knocking you out of the extra deck, and occasionally conflicting with Extravagance, all of that doesn't change, and it's a mostly on-command +1 that triggers Labs for more advantage. Play it at 2 to 3 unless the format straight up doesn't have monsters in it. Ice Dragon's Prison. One of the most frustrating cards here. It's either a dead card or one of the most powerful cards in your deck, depending on the matchup. Non-targeting, banishing removal that also interrupts your opponent's graveyard is insane. The TCG, I have fond memories of playing this card to out Dragoon. Playing this card is meta dependent, but when it's good, it's really good, and you max out on it. And then we have Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch. Newly released in Mysterious Labrynth, this is a Labrynth card in all but name. Sending Backjack with this thing results in a +1 almost all the time. You can pop monsters or back row, and it's not even a once per turn. Some people don't like the Fiend requirement, but I think it's very easy to do in the deck, so I play it at 3 in every list. Now, without further ado, let's get into the list. So here's the list, and I want to preface this by saying that the purpose of the previous segments was to get you to a place where you can tinker with this list to react to what you're seeing on ladder. There are choices in this list that are designed for the current ladder environment that won't always be good, so please keep that in mind if 2 months from now playing some of these cards seem bizarre. Also, I haven't mentioned this up until now, but the deck is also missing Lady Labrynth, a 3F boss monster that was not released in the initial wave of support, so this deck will be getting better in a future pack. Now for the card by card. The first, we have Absolute King Backjack, a 3 of. So this card is crazy. You can send it off you can discard it from a Stovey Torby and a Chandra Gear. You can also send it off at Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch, and it is a free trap card that you can activate on your turn. It also helps combat Harpy's Feather Duster by being able to basically store a trap card on the top of your deck. Very cool interaction. Next, we have Stovey Torby and Shangri-La, previously discussed at 2. Again, consistency boosters. Ash Blossom, staple 3 of that's very good against popular decks right now. Ariana, Searcher, Lovely Labrynth, the 2 of boss. Lord of the Heavenly Prison, this protects your back row. Because you're focusing sort on normal traps, you often don't have a way to... You don't get to play Solemn Judgment. So you need a way to protect your back row, and Lord of the Heavenly Prison does this while also sort of acting like the third copies of Stovey Torby and Shangri-La Gear. A lot of extravagance. It says draw 2, and this deck can play it, so we're playing it. Labrynth, 2 of Field Spell. Playing 2 Torrential Tribute. Playing 2 of these is often weird, or playing 3 of these is often weird because you draw 2 of them, and you really don't want to wipe your own board too often. Plus, it's not on command, it's like a reactive thing. So, I had cut this to 2 to make room for other stuff in here, but it's obviously a very good card. Compulsory Evacuation Device, as previously discussed, this card is insane. 3 of. Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Runic is everywhere, and resolving this is pretty much an insta-win. That's also why we're playing the 2 Trap Chick. We really want to find this deck in matchups where it's good. Even if you're not playing against Runic, there's other matchups where this is pretty decent. If, like, in Branded Despia, they normal summon a Looper to search a Branded Fusion, you can use this to pop the Branded Fusion before it comes out. And also against trap decks, like the Mirror, this deck is a blowout there as well. Next up, Dogmatic Punishment. Hard once per turn, and I find that monsters aren't that prevalent on the meta right now, so I'm playing this at 2, but it's still a really good card that is definitely worth playing. 3 Welcome Labrynth, not much to say here, and 3 Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch. Very versatile card, not once per turn. Very impressed with it. In the extra deck, 3 Elder Entity Intis. If it's sent to the graveyard, you can target one card in the field to destroy it. You're sending this with Dogmatic Punishment. 3 Baguska. You can make this sometimes. It doesn't really ever come up, but it's here in case you need it. A Zeus, you're never making this because you're locked into Fiends, but the extra deck is kind of a loose, and it's a card you can make, so it's here. Linkuriba and Almirage, these are here if you draw Backjack and want to trigger its effect on your first turn. You can normal the Backjack and link into these to do so. 3 Nightmare Phoenix, generic, link to back row removal, that's a Fiend. Super good. I'd be playing more Unicorn as well, but it's an ultra rare, and I don't think Unicorn is that important to access that you need it. Access Code Talker, you're almost never making this, but again, the extra deck is a little loose, so It's a generically good card, so having access to it is never a bad thing. And finally, Underworld Goddess. This is a Fiend, which is really nice, and also is just a generic Towers out. Now that we've done the card by card, let's play some games. We'll play 2 games, one in which I win that I commentate over, and one in which I lose that I commentate over. The game is afoot. Let's get labbing. Our first match is up against Runic Orcust, a cool variant of the other new deck in Mysterious Labyrinth, Runic. Also, disclaimer, the list shown here is slightly different than the one in the video, playing Dimensional Barrier over Ash Blossom. Zeroing first, then start things off by summoning Hugin, searching the field spell, and I assume this is going to be a standard Runic list until a normal summon Harpor, making me 404 for a second. They link into Galatea, then use Harp to summon the limited Gearsu to dump Symbol Skeleton. Galatea effect to shuffle back Harp to set Crescendo from deck, and then linking into another Galatea, using Symbol to summon back the first Galatea. Keeping an Orcust link on field for Crescendo, after the turn they second Galatea into Degirsu. Degirsu attaches Symbol from Banished, then uses the Nightmare they discarded with Hugin to dump World Wand, showing me that I should pay more attention to what they discarded with Hugin. They then activate Reasoning, and knowing they have 2 Harpor in deck, I call 4, which ends up being correct, but not before they mill a million Runic spells. So, seen any good movies lately? There we go. They find the Harpor. We are in for a long game, and they use the last Runic spell in hand to summon Gary to add back a milled Allure, and to trigger the fountain in hand on field to draw 3. They activate Allure and pass turn to us. We draw for turn and Ariana, a very good top deck. We first activate Extravagance to start, and then we draw EEV. You already know what we're doing with this. We summon Ariana, they chain Slumber to banish, then draw with Fountain. Not all before triggering Allure as well, putting back Smiting Storm, Destruction, and another card. We then activate Stovey Torby, discarding itself in Shangri-La, and then they activate Dingirsu, or Crescendo to stop it, which is honestly a pretty puzzling move against a deck that is known for running EEV. We Ariana swing into Gary to prompt the Dingirsu Protect, then set 5 and pass, allowing our opponent to activate Tip and End Phase, searching Destruction to pop a back row, thankfully missing the EEV, and welcome. They banish a total of 7 cards here, including a Lovely, showing the audience why we run 2. They draw for turn and immediately activate Curses targeting Ariana. I'm afraid of losing the second Lovely, so I activate Welcome Year to get it out before they banish it from the deck. They activate Fountain, and I figure now is a perfect time to activate EEV. Knowing they're going to lose all their spells, they activate everything they can to banish as much as they can, while I'm focused on activating Dimensional Barrier to negate Degirsu so they can't protect the on-field Fountain Allure with its effect. They chain Destruction to force out the other bat row, and I chain the set Punishment to target the Galatea. Finally, they chain the Tip to banish one more card from my deck, and that, my friends, is Chain Link 8. Everything resolves, they Dingirsu protect the Galatea before the barrier resolves, and getting to the EEV, we destroy their entire hand. We activate the Int to send off Punishment to destroy Dingirsu, forgetting they use Slumber on it. Cut me some slack, that was like 7 Chain Links ago. Now normally, this would be the end of the game, but while we stop the Runic half of the deck, the Orcust portion is still very much rolling. They World Wand to summon Nightmare, then shuffle back World Wand with Galatea. They link away a bunch of monsters for long Gearsu, putting them in gray for more Orcust shenanigans. Symbol Banish to summon Gearsu, Gearsu jump to shuffle back World Wand, and they pass turn, the battle scene skip from Runic cards. Need a good top deck here, and we draw a Glitch, which is a very, very good top deck. They sung into Gearsu and pass turn. Our opponent draws, EEV makes them reveal that it's a spell, destroying it immediately. My unfamiliarity with Orcust shows here, as if I was smart, I would have immediately popped the Galatea. However, they get to make Dingirsu, and I'm forced to pop my own monster with Glitch to trigger my effects. Fortunately, those effects are enough, setting us another welcome and getting the appliances back into rotation, summoning the Stovey, adding back the Chandelier, and just being very good. They do more Orcust stuff, including tributes. Including tribute summoning a World Wand, which is definitely a move that is not normal. They move to battle, getting us in for a good chunk of damage. Now, they could have gone for lethal here with an access code and an extra check. There's a good chance they just don't play it, as milling is their win con. We would have survived, as the Backjack in our graveyard would have set a Compulse in battle phase, but this would have made our engine a lot worse, not allowing us to trigger the labs in our turn. With nothing else to do, they pass turn, but not before we Backjack to set Compulse. Return we draw, that doesn't really matter. We discard it with Shangri-La to set a field spell that we still have in deck. We activate it, Compulse the Dingirsu, and from here, the hell of our Majesty's design builds around our opponent. We use the set Welcome to summon an Ariana we have left, and trigger the Lovely by popping Galatea. We put up a defensive pressure, attack for a chunk of damage, set a punishment with Lovely, and our opponent under EEV and an Orcust engine on its last legs is nothing left to resist us. Swing, swing, Lovely effect, pass turn. Our opponent draws for turn, a Gozin match, and although they get to keep it, our opponent, after a fruitless move, resigns the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. We win with one more card in our deck. That was a crazy hectic game. How about one that's a little simpler that we lose? We go first, and although we open a Lovely, which is not ideal, we open some nice traps. All we need is for this extravagance to draw into engine. We banish 6, and get ashed. We'll find that one to be very devastating. We set 3 and pass. They draw and activate Black Fang Magician in scale before activating Duelist Alliance to search Pendulum Sorcerer. This deck is Pendulum Magician featuring autos and Perform Pow cards. They scale Stargazer and Pendulum Summon 3, including Pendulum Sorcerer and Harmonizing Magician, which is terrifying. They summon Celestial Magician and pop their scales to search Dissolver and Skullcrabat Joker. Yep, they haven't normal summoned yet. They see summon times their star, and I can pulse that, seeing a chance to get some nice value from it. Next, they normal Joker and search Wisdom Eye before scaling Dissolver. As a viewer of the Deck Detective YouTube series, I know that Dissolver can summon some terrifying stuff, and so that I activate the punishment here, popping one of the Dark Monsters before popping the Dissolver with Intis, also trying to prevent them from getting the Starving King Dragon Super King Venom. They use the last 2 materials to make Electromite, which after sending Ash Scrap with it, I use the last Compulse on. Splendid! I've stopped their advance. Now I just need to draw Engine. I draw for turn. I do not draw Engine, but at the very least this will keep me alive for a turn. They draw with Wisdom Eye and Scale, any Perform Power Magician does it, which they find. They put Pendulum Summon, Pensork, and pop the scales to search another Lady Ancient Joker before using Double Iris to search Star Pendulum Graph. That's sort of scary, but luckily for us, nothing they have access to is a Magician. That doesn't change when they summon Joker to search Gentrude, and once they scale the 2 monsters in hand to try for a search, I activate the punishment. Popping Joker before using the Sent Intis to pop Lady Ange. They swing for 15, and I pray to God I draw Engine. I draw for turn. I do not draw Engine. I pass turn. They summon a drawn Gentrude before using those to summon Beyond the Pendulum, which, hey, I can Ash. I do so, and they swing for 12 before passing turn. I draw for turn, and I do not draw Engine. I pass turn. They draw, and their draw is the 3rd Joker. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of Joker myself. I Ash the Joker, but at this point they have lethal by making Selena the access code, which they proceed to not do. They make Selena after battle, revive Celestial, and pass turn. I draw for turn and draw Stovey Torby, which it is Engine. I can say that much, but at this point it's too little too late. And once I see that they drew a low scale, I go ahead and concede. And that's that. This deck is pretty good. As Floodgates grow ever more popular after the release of Runic, having a deck that can ignore them and play targeted Floodgates of their own while still being a fun, thoughtful, and interesting deck feels really nice. We've done our investigation, now let's get into the closing argument. Before we begin, let's go over the potential verdicts. At the lowest, we have law-abiding nursing home resident. Decks here cannot and will not hurt anyone, least of all a serious duelist. Decks here might not even make it to Platinum, let alone Diamond. A step up, we have Harmless Delinquent. A deck here is capable of holding its own in Platinum, but will struggle to put up a fight against tiered decks, and will usually peter out before it breaches Diamond. After that, we have Lone Wolf. A deck in this category is overlooked by most, but those who underestimate it can find themselves crumbling to their hidden power. Capable of going on a good run into Diamond, but will struggle to get to Diamond 1 consistently. And finally, we have Public Enemy number 1. If a deck is here, it is among the most powerful, consistent, and versatile the game has to offer. Pilots of these decks expect to be able to climb to Diamond 1 and to be in every duel they play. Now, up for judgment, Labrynth. The deck has many positives. The deck's grind game is insane once you're set up. Between the appliances adding and summoning back, Ariana drawing cards, Lovely attacking their hand, Backjack getting more traps for free, and Lovely resetting your used traps, you're plussing frequently and with cards that are impactful. While the grind is a little more fragile than other trap decks like Elmlich, the cards you are grinding with are much better. As mentioned previously, this deck operates on an axis that many decks aren't prepared for. When decks show up with Monster Negates, Banishes, and Floodgates, setting 3 to 5 cards can be overwhelming for them. And finally, getting to play Virus cards feels so good right now. The dopamine rush from EEV tributing Lovely, then Field Spell to summon back Lovely like nothing ever happened, makes this deck worth it alone. The deck also has some negatives. It has the usual problems that all trap decks do. They're slow, hard to go second with, and suffer greatly from being hit by a back row sweeper. Unlike other trap decks like Eldritch, the deck sort of operates on two halves, the Labrynth half and the half of actually good trap cards. There's a lot of mediocre cards in Labrynth that you need to run to make the engine work, albeit a problem that gets much better once Lady comes out. This makes drawing too much of one half problematic. Too much Labrynth and your deck doesn't do much. Too many generics and your deck can't win the game. And finally, it's kinda hard to focus with such a majestic princess on my board. All in all, it's a grindy trap deck with specialized access to many powerful traps, but struggles with consistent board power and breaking through a field of negates. However, this deck is capable of bringing the heat against the majority of matchups, in some cases even being favored, and the combination of potent engine and adaptable deck building is more than enough to get it to lone wolf, and when Lady comes out, it could be a serious tiered threat. Thank you for watching. If you would like more guidance on how to make this deck work from people who have played the deck more than me, I highly recommend the Labrynth Discord server in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Archetype repository, or the Labrynth channel in the Master Duel Meta Discord server. If you liked this video, consider liking and subscribing to me. Also comment below what you liked, what you think needs improvement, or tell me my list was garbage and that I should consider bear hugging the Demon Core. Also, check me out on Twitter, where I follow other VTubers and Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, as well as post updates and my thoughts, and Twitch, where I stream Master Duel rank climbs, other Master Duel Yu-Gi-Oh! Related content, and other games. Thank you, and have a good day.